The mistake that made Americans hate roundabouts. I have no idea what it could possibly be. Roundabouts make so much sense. We don't have a lot. We've covered roundabouts on the channel here. If you never watched before, we've done quite a few roundabout videos. I haven't seen this one. It just came out about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And roundabouts are super interesting because every time they install them here in the States, in pretty much both cities that I've lived in where they put them in, somebody always drives full speed into the middle of it. I might have shared a video last time. It happened about 2 years ago. I think right around Christmas time, someone drove straight through it and then into a building. So let's figure out from safe by design why Americans hate roundabouts and what is this mistake. I'm hoping we get some history behind the roundabouts. Without further ado, smash like button. Let's dive in.
Day, millions of Americans sit at red lights and wait. They watch the countdown. They check their phones. They trust the system to keep them safe. But here's what most people don't realize. A standard four-way intersection has 32 places where one car's path crosses directly into another's. 32 chances for a collision, every single cycle. A European roundabout? 8. And every one of those 8 is a slow merging movement, the kind that almost never kills anyone. So you'd think Europe invented this, but they didn't. America did. In 1905, 25 years before most of Europe had a single traffic circle. We built the concept, pioneered it, and then spent 50 years making it so dangerous and confusing that the entire country swore them off, right as the rest of the world figured out how to make them work. So what went wrong? And what did Europe do differently? Let's start with the circle that
Who's my daughter talking to? I just heard her say, "You don't think I like him." She's 12 going on 13, so it's about that time. All right, let's keep going. My bad.
Scarred Americans for a generation. New York City, 1905. The streets are a free-for-all. Horses, streetcars, bicycles, and the first wave of automobiles all converging on intersections with no signals, no signs, and no rules. A man named William Phelps Eno, widely considered the father of American traffic management, designs a circle at the southwest corner of Central Park, Columbus Circle, the first traffic circle in the United States. The idea was elegant. Instead of vehicles crossing each other's paths at right angles, they'd all flow in the same direction around a central island. No stopping, no conflicting turns, just smooth, continuous movement. And the concept spread. Over the next few decades, large traffic circles appeared across the American Northeast. But they had a fundamental problem. They were enormous, and they were built for...
I was just going to say, I was like, it looked pretty big with a lot of lanes going into it. I know you guys make them work. I've seen a couple of them, especially the really large one that's in France. I think there's like 5 or different roads going into it. But yeah, you might want to start with just 4. This is huge. It's really beautiful, though. Looking at it, I wish we did more of this.
Speed. Entry points were wide and sweeping. Vehicles could pour in at 40 or 50 miles per hour without slowing down. And here's where it gets really backwards. The rules said that cars already inside the circle had to yield to cars entering. Think about what that means. The vehicles flooding in from every direction had priority over the ones already circulating. At rush hour, the whole thing seized up.
How did they get that so wrong?
When it wasn't gridlocked, it was terrifying. Engineers tried to fix it the only way they knew how. They bolted traffic signals onto the circles. They added stop signs. They essentially grafted a traditional intersection onto circular design, defeating the entire purpose.
Yeah,
and when
that's
that didn't
pointless.
work out, they tore them out. By the 1950s, the American traffic circle was a confirmed failure. The word circle triggered anxiety. And for the next 40 years, the country built almost no new circular intersections of any kind. But here's the critical thing. What Americans learned to hate was not a roundabout. It was a traffic circle. And those are two fundamentally different things. But while America was ripping out its circles, Britain was struggling with the same problems. Their circles worked at low traffic volumes, but turned chaotic and dangerous as cities grew. Then, in 1966, one rule changed everything. The UK made it mandatory. Entering traffic must yield to circulating traffic, not the other way around.
It's wild to me that it took them that America didn't even figure it out. When we trying to fix this, they put stop signs in. It's like you could have just switched this one rule. It probably would have been better. I know they were still really large, but definitely would have helped.
It sounds simple, but it was actually revolutionary. Under the
Really?
old system,
I guess,
vehicles kept pouring in until the circle choked. Under the new rule, the circle always stayed clear. Cars could only enter when there was a gap. The system became self-regulating. But the British...
It's really... I know I'm sitting here and I'm like, how did they not think of that? But if you go back in time, you know, this is all brand new. I could assume why some people might not immediately think about the yielding rule.
Didn't stop there. They realized something that echoes what we saw in the European highways video. The geometry of the road matters more than signs or rules. Remember how European highway lanes are deliberately narrower? How that tightness forces drivers to stay alert and slow down? The same principle drives roundabout design. Make the circle smaller, tighten the entry curves, narrow the lanes. You physically force drivers to slow down. Not with signs, not with signals, but with the shape of the road itself. When you approach a modern European roundabout, the entry curve is sharp enough to bring you down to about 15 to 20 miles per hour. And here's the paradox. It works because it feels less comfortable. A slight tension behind the wheel is what keeps you safe, just like those narrow European highway lanes. Here's something most people get wrong. There's no single European roundabout. The British design and the Dutch design evolved along completely different tracks, solving different problems. British roundabouts historically prioritized moving the most cars possible. Wider entries, multi-lane circulation, higher throughput. Continental designers, particularly in countries like the Netherlands and Denmark, where millions of people cycle daily, went tighter. Single-lane entries, smaller diameters.
Oh, look at that. That is crazy. This is a bike lane that goes above it, I assume? Looks like it. It's much smaller. Maybe not. No, it's got to be a bike lane, right? That's so cool.
Entry arms aimed straight at the center island, so drivers have to turn sharply and slow way down. There's no single blue to an effective European roundabout, but Europe shares a commitment to iteration. Decades of building, studying what went wrong, adjusting, and building again. Mini roundabouts that fit into existing intersections with minimal construction. Different island sizes. Different entry angles.
That's crazy.
Each version refines.
You know what? I think from our roundabout video, if I'm correct, I believe this is one that's in the UK that's everybody talks about. Tell me if I'm right or not in the comments.
Sizes. Different entry angles. Each version refines the balance between speed, capacity, and safety. By the 1990s, the modern roundabout was one of the most evidence-backed safety tools in transportation engineering. Countries across Europe and Australia had millions of data points proving these compact, slow-speed circles dramatically reduced crashes. And the United States had almost none. But there's one place where the United States made a different choice. Carmel, Indiana, 1996. A growing suburb of about 30,000 people north of Indianapolis. Same infrastructure as every American city its size. Traffic signals, four-way stops, congestion, and a steady stream of serious crashes. Mayor Jim Brainard had just returned from traveling in Europe. He'd walked through towns organized around compact, flowing intersections. No stoplights, no gridlock, just continuous movement. He came home with an idea his constituents thought was insane. He wanted to rip out Carmel's traffic lights and replace them with roundabouts. The resistance was immediate. Residents pictured the chaotic rotaries of the Northeast. Public meetings were contentious. The local press was skeptical. Brainard built them anyway. He started smart, in a newly constructed corridor where there were no existing signals to replace and no entrenched habits to overcome. The roundabouts worked. Traffic flowed. Crashes dropped. So he built more. Today, Carmel has over 155 roundabouts and only 8 traffic signals left. The city's population has tripled to about 100,000, yet
like, how do you look at this data and not go, us Americans, and go, we should do this everywhere? Or do we just like having crashes all the time? Shout out to this, what did they say? It was a mayor? Shout out to this mayor that went to Europe and actually learned something and brought it back and helped improve our country.
Signals left. The city's population has tripled to about 100,000, yet injury crashes have dropped by 80%. And here's what the skeptics
80%.
Didn't expect. Each roundabout saves between $5,000 and $10,000 a year in maintenance and electricity, because there are no signals to power, no bulbs to replace. Vehicles no longer idle at red lights, saving millions of gallons of fuel. Carbon monoxide emissions dropped by as much as 45%. Carmel proved something that should worry every traffic light manufacturer in America. Roundabout adoption isn't an engineering problem. The engineering was solved decades ago. It's a political problem. It takes a leader willing to endure the backlash and the patience to let results speak for themselves. So, roundabouts are safer for drivers. The data is unequivocal. But what about the people who aren't in cars? For pedestrians, the news is mostly good.
It's got to be way safer. Our roundabout that we have in town in our square, I feel very, very safe when I'm crossing the roads in that roundabout because everyone's driving so slow. They do have to slow down.
Distances are shorter, and you only deal with one direction of traffic at a time. Converting conventional intersections to roundabouts reduces pedestrian crashes by about 75%, but cyclists present a harder problem. And here's where the difference between British and continental design really shows up. Traditional British roundabouts, with their wider entries and higher speeds, were particularly dangerous for people on bikes. The Dutch saw this and did what they do best.
Ride a bike in the middle of the street?
They redesigned the geometry around the most vulnerable user. Their solution looks like this. The bike lane doesn't merge into traffic at the roundabout. It stays fully separated, running in its own ring about 15 feet outside the vehicle circle.
Nice.
Drivers entering and exiting the roundabout cross the bike path at near perpendicular angles, where they can clearly see cyclists approaching. Not in a blind spot, not mid-merge, but directly ahead. Pedestrian crosswalks sit just behind the bike ring, giving each group, drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, their own dedicated space. It's the same philosophy we saw in the Dutch intersection redesign from the highways video. When you design for the most vulnerable person first, everyone gets safer. This is the frontier of roundabout design globally. The question is no longer whether roundabouts beat traffic lights for cars. They do. The question is how to make them equally safe for the 8-year-old on a bicycle, the elderly pedestrian with a cane, the visually impaired commuter navigating by sound. There's one more thing.
I would say that if we had more pedestrians in our cities, I mean, our major cities, you go to New York or something, and there's going to be a ton of people walking around. But a lot of our big cities, medium-sized cities or even small cities, if we just had more pedestrians, then maybe the want and the need for roundabouts would be a little bit stronger. Yeah.
About roundabouts that rarely gets discussed. They don't need electricity. A roundabout works during a power outage, a hurricane, or an ice storm. When every traffic light in a city goes dark, roundabouts keep moving. No backup generators, no police officers directing traffic. Safety is built into the geometry. The service life tells a similar story. A typical traffic signal lasts about 10 years before it needs a major overhaul.
Now that I think about it, our schools that are around the corner from my home, they have to, every single day when school gets out, they have to shut down. They turn the lights just to red flashing, and then they have to bring someone out to direct traffic through the intersection for like a half an hour, just while all the kids get out of school. You would save, I don't think that would even be needed anymore if we had roundabouts. They would get a little backed up, but...
A roundabout? 25. It's infrastructure that outlasts the technology it replaces. And yet, as of 2026, the United States has about 10,000 roundabouts. That sounds like a lot until you compare it to roughly 300,000 signalized intersections. France alone has over 30,000. The gap is closing.
30,000?
States like New York and Virginia have adopted roundabout-first policies. The Federal Highway Administration lists them as a proven safety countermeasure. Every year, more cities follow Carmel's lead. But the story of the American roundabout is really a story about how first impressions shape infrastructure for generations. In 1905, we had an idea decades ahead of its time. We built it wrong. We spent 50 years recovering from the mistake, and now we're finally catching up to what the rest of the world figured out while we weren't paying attention. Roundabouts reduce injury crashes by up to 80%. They save lives, money, fuel, and time. The engineering is settled. The evidence is clear. The only question left is how long it takes the rest of the country to accept it.
All right. I think I'm going to have to write a letter to my city council. Thanks for the recommendation, you guys. That was really, really good. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think I'm done for the day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.